Hi. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is I'm going to analyze a hymn called It Is Well With My Soul and identify the chord names and Roman numeral numbers for this composition. This is a hymn, so actually it's one of the easier ones to analyze, but it has some really interesting chords in it, which is why I picked this one. So I've got, I'm just going to sight read through it. As you can see on the hymnal that I'm going to show you next, there's no chords written in or anything, so I'm working out this from scratch, just to show you that I know how to identify chords just by their notes, and that I know my Roman numeral numbers. So here's the hymn. There we go. There's no Roman numerals or note names. It's just, the whole thing is just plain old chords. Okay, so here's the song, what it sounds like, and then I'll go through and identify the chord numbers and names. So except for that one mistake, that's the song. It consists of several phrases. There's a verse and a chorus, which is also partly why I picked this one, because it has very different feels for both. You've got the first phrase is so you've got that phrase, and then, which is basically 4 measures long. It has a pickup and then 3 beats. It has a pickup for the first note and then 3 beats for the last one, but together it equals 4 beats, 4 measures total. And then that's kind of like a tag on to the end of the second one. It's kind of like just 3 measures, which is unusual because usually phrases are 4 measures long, like the first one was, but it just has this. And it helps it not drag too much because it's only 3 beats long, so it's not like sitting at the end of every 4 measures. And that's kind of 2, but like the first 2, they're a little bit connected. They go. So that's 4 measures, and then you've got. Which is essentially 3 measures again. So you kind of have this 4-3 together and then 4-3 together structure. Then you've got the chorus is super simple compared to the verse. So there's just the it is well, and then it echoes, and then it repeats, then echoes again. So that's kind of 1, 2, and it's kind of like 3 measures, and then 2 measures basically, I keep hesitating on those ones because they have they'll have this pickup thing, and then they'll have 2 beats at the end of the phrase. So it looks a little bit different than 2 measures. See, I'll see if I can show you this. You've got, like here, it starts with my soul starts early. It's not on the first beat, it's middle, and then it ends on after the first 2 beats, and then the next phrase starts. So whenever I hesitate on those, it's because I'm used to seeing them starting at the beginning of the measure, not the middle. And so then it ends with 3 measures, which is really 2 beats, and then 2 measures, and then 3 beats. So it's like 2 measures, and then 2 on this side and 3 on this side. So you kind of have 3 measures and just slightly more than that to make up for the pickup at the beginning. So rhythmically, it's actually quite interesting too, because it has a lot more pickups and starting at unusual spots in the measure than usual. So the first chord in the piece is C, because we're in the key of C, like you can see right there. No sharps or flats, so we're in the key of C. The first chord is C, so it's a major. If it was no sharps or flats in the key signature and it started on the A minor chord, then we'd be in A minor, and there would probably be a lot of G sharps around. But it's not. We're in the key of C. So we've got the first one is a C chord, which is your 1 chord, and it's major, so it's capital 1. Second chord, same thing. The second chord is, well, second chord in the measure. This is the first interesting chord that we've got, and it's really kind of a passing tune, because if you listen to it, it's going to the coming up C chord. But we might as well look at it for fun. This is kind of a C. It's got C, it's got D, F, and G in it. So if we move these notes around a little bit, we can come up with a kind of a 2-7 chord, but on top of that you also have that G in there. So really this can be considered a D minor 11, which is fun because that's a chord extension, and I love those. They take you past the 7 chord, and then they start stacking on top of that. So really we could call this like a D minor sus 7 chord, but they don't say sus 7. When you've got the 7, they actually say, instead of sus, they add up numbers. So past 7, they just say, okay, that now you assume that you have 7, just like you assume you have 1, 3, and 5. And once you get past 8, you're just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And so the sus of the D minor chord is G, and because we have 7, 2, we would just call that a D11 minor chord. Anyway, so that's the first interesting chord, and we're only 3 chords in. Then you're back to the C chord. So it goes C, C, D minor 11, and then C. Or we could just consider that D minor 11 a passing tone, which is what it sounds like. So my guess is that's what it is it's just helping the melody go by steps, because that's a very common thing to do. Instead of going, which would be boring, they go da 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 da. So that makes me want to go into the da 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 da. I don't know, because it starts the same way. But you've got those chords. Sometimes they come up with really weird chords, really just because it's a passing tone. So it's almost like it doesn't really count as another chord. I just wanted to talk about that one because it was a chord extension. So then you've got a C chord. We're on this second measure, not counting the pickup. So you've got C chord, and then you've got 5/7 chord. G going from the bottom up. I'll try to see if I can show this to you. So it's really just a G7 chord in third inversion, because this would be root inversion, second, then you got, root first, second, third. So yeah, it's in third inversion. And it goes back to 1, which is not a surprise because 5/7, which is what the G7 is in the key of C, 5/7 often goes back to 1. It's very unusual it goes somewhere else. Anyway, so you got 1, 5/7, back to 1, and then this is a fun chord. Its root is actually D, but the chord itself is just a regular 5/7. It just sounds different because the root is different. If this was at the end of a phrase and it was ending on 5/7, it would be like an imperfect cadence because it didn't end with the root note being the root of the chord. So we're on, and then that's fun because actually you get to take this, I'll see if I can pull this out to one hand. I dropped the D in the bass because it's doubled in my right hand anyway, but look at this, this is awesome. You've got your 5/7 chord and then you've got your 9 on top of that. That's why I love this song so much, because it keeps having these cool chord extensions. And that's a really fun sound. It's hard to play with one hand because my hands are not very big. But anyway, there's your G9 chord, which, like with the 11, they just call it 9 instead of saying it's your G2 chord. They just when it's got the 7, they just say 9, and you assume that it's got a 7 just like the 1 through 5. Okay, so we were on, yep, we were on that chord because that's the 5/9 chord. Then you've just got a regular old 5 chord. It's only got G, B, and G, and it has like 3 G's, but it doesn't have any top of the chord, any D. But we just had it in the last chord, so it's still a 5/7 chord even though it's missing the top of the chord. And then it gives you not only the top of the chord, the D, it also gives you the F, which makes it a 5/7 chord again. So just to review here, we've got this lovely 5/7 chord that turns into a 9 chord and then turns to a straight 5, and then 5/7, and what are we expecting next? A 1, right? And we're right. And then we've got a 1 again for the beginning of the next phrase. And then that is actually a minor 6 chord. If I moved all my notes down into a root position, I'd have C, I'd have A, C, and E, which is just your minor 6 chord. The 4th most common chord. You've got 1 chord's most common, 5 chords second most, 4th is 3rd most common, and then 6 is the 4th most common. And then I assume after that you've got probably your 2 is the next most common, and then probably 3 is fairly uncommon, and then your 7 is super uncommon because it's diminished. Like, you can't even do you can't do the secondary dominant chords even on a 7 because it's diminished. You have to use a major or minor triad to do secondary dominants. So you can only do secondary dominants not on 1 chord because that's the root, so the dominant would just be the regular dominant. So you can only do it on 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, because 7 and 1 are eliminated. 7 because it's diminished, 1 because it's dominant is already, it's not a secondary dominant, it's just a dominant. Anyway, that was a bonus. And I talked briefly about secondary dominants because we've got some coming right up. So you've got C, which is your 1 chord, and then, like we just said, that's your A minor chord. And then this here is fun. You've got your E chord. This is actually the secondary dominant, the 3, 7, the 3, 5, 7, the 5, 7 of 3. Because we've got an E major chord here. We've got B. We've got G sharp, and we've got E, and then we actually have the 7th as well, the D, which I moved it all around so that it's in root position so you can see it better. It was like all stretched out. But as you can see, those are all the same notes. I just squished them down into a root 7. And so that is, if we move down 5 notes from your E chord. Oh, sorry, this isn't the 3-7. This is actually the 6-7. That's right. It is a 3-7. It would be a 3-7 originally, like a 3 major 7. But because of its place in this song, it's not in the key signature. So it's actually functioning, it's a secondary function, it's functioning as the 6th chord, which is A, because if you can go back five steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you're on A, which is telling you what the dominant, of which dominant it is. It's kind of confusing to talk about this because it's a 5, it is a 7 chord, and it would be a 3 chord in the key of C because it starts on E. But it's a 3 major 7, which means that it's functioning as the 6 chord's dominant. Which, like I talked about, you can have the dominant of the 6th chord. It's very unusual. But, especially like in a normal hymn like this. But that's your secondary dominant for the 6th chord. The secondary dominant for the 2 chord is much more common. I mean, when you've got the 5 of 5, where it's a major 2 chord, like the major 3 chord we just did, major 2 chords are a lot more common because that's actually the dominant of the key, and a lot of times they're used in key changes and modulations and stuff too. So, anyway, there's your 5 of your 6th chord, your E7, and it's actually 5-7 because it's got that 7 on top. So. And then we're back to A minor here because we have A, C, well, starting from the bottom, we have C, A, C, and A. It doesn't have the E on the top, but that's an A chord. And then you've got your, because the very next chord, it fills in the extra E chord, which is this one. Right here. So you've got your A chord without the top, then A chord with the 5th note of the chord. And then you've got your, this is just your regular 5 chord. And then you've got, you get a D chord. Now this is just a straight up D chord, but it's D major, which in the key of C is your major 2, which means it's acting as your 5 of 5. Because if we went up 5 notes from C, we're on G. That's your dominant chord. We keep using it. And then you go up 5 notes from there, and you're on D. But the tip off is when it's major, because the 2, just the regular old 2 chord would be minor. It would be 2 little I's. But when it's major, that means it's a secondary. It's using its secondary function as the 5 of 5, which, like I said earlier, is more common than the 5 of 6 that we had earlier. Okay, So we got 5 of 5, and then surprise, surprise, you go to the regular 5. Then you have your regular 5/7. Then C, which is your 1 chord, finally. And then that is actually your C7. I'll move these notes around a little bit, but you've got E at the bottom, C at the top of your left hand, then G at the bottom of your right hand, and B at the top of your right hand. And so if we move that E just up an octave, we've got this, which is your C7 chord. And I bet that's going to go to your 4 chord, but we'll get there. Okay. So we got C, C, C7. Again, it's kind of like a moving tone, like the very first D minor 9 chord we were talking about, but it still sounds very cool. And it's nice to know the names and definitions of it. And then, it does go to the 4 chord. That's your F chord, F on the bottom, C on the top, then F, A. Then you got your F chord again. It just dropped the bottom of the right hand, but it's still F in the left hand. They were doubled up. Nice. So this here is actually your A7, which if you count backwards is your A. That's your 5/7 of your 2 chord. So remember how we got the 2 major chord that was your 5 of 5? Now this is actually the 5 of your 2 chord. Because you've got E in the bottom, then C sharp, which is what makes it A major instead of just a regular 6 minor chord. Then you've got G, and then A. Let's see here, where are we? Oh, and then we go, surprise, we go to the do chord. You kind of notice this pattern. Usually when it goes 5/7 or 5 of a different chord, it goes that chord to the original 5 or the original chord. So in this case, we're going, this is your major 2 chord. So it may actually be your 5 of 5 of 5, because this is actually your 2 major chord, because we've got D, D, F sharp, and D, which means the F sharp makes it a D major chord. So this may actually be your 5 of your 5 of your 5 in the original key, which is really cool. And then you go, then that's your, instead of just plain old 2, major 2/7, which is functioning, like we said, as your 5 of 5. This is your 2/7 chord, because it has that C on the top of it, instead of just being D, F sharp, and A. And then you're back to G, which is your regular 5 chord. So to review, we went 5 of 5 of 5, 5 of 5, and now we're just on the 5 chord. It's crazy. And then this chord is actually, this is also a 7 chord, but it's your 6/7 chord. So actually a minor 7 chord. So it's not functioning as a 5 of 5 or a 5 of anything. It's not a secondary function. It's just a plain old 7 chord, even though it's on your chord 6, which is not as common to have a 7 on it as 5 is. But you've got A, C, E, and G, which is your minor 6/7 chord. So we're working back to normal chords at this point. I'm trying to find where I was at. Oh yeah, there we go. That's the 6/7 chord. That's nice. You start with your regular 5, and then you hear the 7 down at the bottom. It's walking down, actually, to the next chord, which is, the root is E, even though it's a C chord. The root is E because it's in first inversion. And then, so it goes E, C, G, and then it doubles on C up in the melody. And then you've got your C chord. Again, E is still in the bass. And then this is your 2/7 chord, but just regular 2, not major 2. So it is actually your 2/7 chord, not your 5/5. If we moved it up here, the whole thing outlined, right hand and left hand together, would just be that regular plain old 2/7 chord, minor 2. I have to remember to clarify because there's a bunch of major 2s in this song. And then, so then it goes back to your C. So we've got C, D minor 7, which is kind of a passive tone, to your plain old 1 chord again. And then you've got your 5, regular 5. And then you've got your C chord, which the bass is C, then it goes G, and then you've got in your alto voice A, and then C is your melody again. And this is at the end of the verse. And then the chorus starts in, which is much simpler, so it should go faster. You've got, which is just 3 G notes. And then you've got, which is just a one chord first inversion, and then G chord in root inversion. It's split between the hand, but it's still the root inversion. And then you've got same thing, 3 G's in a row. So you've got, this is your plain G chord, G, B, and D. It's in root position and everything. And then you've got G, D. They cut out the B for the second one because they just played it. And then F on the top. So now it went 5, 5, 7. 5, 7, and you can feel the more tension in that, and I'm guessing it's going to go back to 1, partly because I know the song and partly because we just had a 5 and a 5, 7. So, yep, it goes back to 1. And that's just C, C in the bass clef, and then E in the alto, and then you've got G in the soprano line or the melody. And then it does kind of the same thing. You've got C, C, but with the top note this time. And then you go to your 4 chord, which is F, 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 and then you've got C, but it doesn't feel quite finished yet because in the bass, you've only got G as your root. So even though that's a C chord, it doesn't feel like it's over yet. Okay, and then we've got a 5 chord that actually has the root as the root of the 5 chord. And then you've got your C chord, but like I said with the earlier when it had G in the root, it still doesn't feel done. So they can get away with doing that. And then your 1 chord, which is a perfect cadence because it goes from your G, and then you go to your 1. It would have been, if you'd stopped on that one, it would have been an imperfect cadence because there was not the root of the chord would not have been in the root of the bass. But because it goes to C on the bottom, G in the tenor, E in alto, and then C in the soprano, we have a perfect cadence, an authentic cadence, 5, 1. So that's It Is Well With My Soul. That's my analysis of the Roman numeral numbers. I really like it because it's got all that unusual chordal stuff. But I just wanted to show that with this little piece of paper and just the chord notes, you can come up with the Roman numerals, numbers, letter names. And yeah, this is in the key of C, but it is not an easy piece. I like doing it in the key of C because it's easier to see on the piano what chord is which, because they're all white keys in this particular key. So if I have a black key, I know right away that it's going to be functioning as something else. So anyway, that's It Is Well With My Soul. Really interesting hymn, and one that seems pretty easy to sing, but the chords are really interesting. So hopefully that will help with showing that I know my chords and my Roman numeral numbers.